Good morning, noon, and night, my friends. Thanks for joining in. Today, on What Game Should I Buy, we're going to talk about what is perhaps the most legendary game of 2023, Baldur's Gate 3. That's right. I've been doing a little research. I've been doing a little playing. I've been doing a little watching of the Game Awards. And I've got to say, even this grand channel here has noticed this thing's making waves. I mean, even people who don't game have probably heard of Baldur's Gate 3 at this point. It's kind of on that level of like Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Madden. Just everybody knows about it, even people who don't game. And given the number of games, the sheer number that drop these days, that's pretty incredible to be able to break through into the mainstream culture. Now, I kicked us off with their great song, Down by the River. Hopefully I don't get taken down for it. Just a little quiet in the background. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, it's absolutely hilarious. It's a reference to Chris Farley's bit in Saturday Night Live, famously living in a van down by the river. Because when you first create your character, you might as well be living in a van down by the river. You got nothing. And that's one cool thing about this game, and the way it is designed it, is you start from rags and you go to riches, which is quite a satisfying feeling if a game can pull it off right. Anywho, before we jump down the rabbit hole that is Baldur's Gate 3, I just want to tell you, number one, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate anyone who views this video. And number two, I've put in probably 40 hours to this game. And I know some people, if they've been playing Baldur's Gate 3, they might be scoffing right now. 40 hours? That's nothing. And that's true. I've literally only made it through Act 2. It's a 3-act game. It is enormous, huge, amazing, truly an immersive world to live in. And we're going to get into it. Let's get into it. Alright, Baldur's Gate 3. A 2023 role-playing game developed and published by Larian Studios. The game is the third main installment in the Baldur's Gate series. Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry, there's a weird ad. Based on the tabletop role-playing system of Dungeons & Dragons. That's right, this is D&D the game. Now, here's the curious part about this that a lot of people probably don't know. Baldur's Gate was actually released at an alpha early access form in 2020. 3 years ago. It was a Stadia game, the long maligned game system that went out of business not too long ago. And then boom, they just took off like a rocket around August of this year when they released the full game on Steam and, later on PS5. And as of December 9th or something like that, even Xbox Series X. That's right. So if you're a Switch owner, obviously, this game isn't going to work for you. It's very high powered. It renders a lot of intensive hardware performances that the Nintendo Switch is just not going to stand up to right now. But even so, you should check it out. Maybe watch a YouTube video on it, because I got to say, this game is worth the playing. If you like role-playing games, amazing game. Now, in terms of the rating of Baldur's Gate 3, before I get into that, because it did take me a little while to debate on it, I want to say this game deserves all the awards it has gotten. It's incredible what they've done. They had 248 voice actors alone. The amount of lines that are in this game that are written and voice acted is mind-boggling. It's truly crazy. Now, these guys made Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2. So if you're familiar with how those games work in terms of, you can see here, turn-based combat implementation, you can see more of that. You may enjoy that kind of style where you direct your character, you click, the enemies go through all their turns up here in a turn order. It's a roll of dice mixed with your stats, just like in D&D. And it determines whether you hit with your attack, or if you can perform a certain spell, or if you can go into a rage like a barbarian, all sorts of things. And anyway, it's all turn-based in that regard. Now, I don't mean the entire game is like that where you click and point to where you want to go. That's just during combat. There's two broad swaths of this game. There's combat and exploration. Exploration You're just walking around in the open world, Mass Effect style, and you can talk to people, you can uncover hilarious stories, you can make money, you can play performances, you can try and lie. It's all sorts of goofy stuff you can do. It's fun. Now, that is part of why Baldur's Gate won so much and such a variety of awards. They got Game of the Year, number one, Multiplayer Game of the Year, because let's face it, what is D&D without friends, right? And they believe that here. Now, I do have some qualms with the multiplayer. I'll admit it can be a little bit finicky and a bit cumbersome with partying up with different people, but they do a better job than the people over at Dark Souls from Soft. They do a little better job than that. It's not completely seamless, but it is playable, and it is not incredibly frustrating after you get over that learning hump. It's one of those, you got to get a little learning hump in on exactly how the system works, and then it's pretty satisfying. Alright, so that's why it's a great multiplayer game. Role-playing game. Do I need to spend much time on this? I mean, come on. D&D successfully translated to a game. You can be any number of classes. You can blend your class. It takes hours and hours and hours of gameplay to fully flesh out your character. So you really do start off feeling like a peasant farmer and end up feeling like some sort of demigod. It's quite great. Now, performance. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what this category means, but the idea is that when they were capturing people's facial expressions and things like that, and even your player character's facial expressions and body movements, varied. I mean, a lot of variety. They put so much into the facial textures that you get a lot of emotion whenever you're hearing the story. It's a bit like being in a Final Fantasy game in that regard. It's beautiful. Now, certain things look goofy, like when you jump with your character while you're traversing the landscape or cross into a river, your guy might look a little funky. But, I mean, these are very minor things. Player's voice, that just means this was a 100% player-voted category, and people went bananas. They loved it. Community support. That is something I'll admit, if you are into online games, don't let the appearance of Baldur's Gate fool you. You can join parties online randomly. You can join with your friends, as I mentioned. And there's a great amount of stuff on Reddit, Discord, all over the internet where people are gassing about this game and just having a good time. The score/soundtrack. I mean, come on, Down by the River. What more do you need to say, right? That's awesome. It's truly awesome. Oh, man, I was going to play something for you, but it looks like another ad popped up. Ugh, these YouTube ads. Alright, we'll put it on a little bit, just to give you a taste. The narrative. This story is pretty cool so far. I haven't finished it, but there's, as with most RPGs that are well made, you can think of it a bit like Skyrim in that you have one main overarching quest line, kind of your big baddie goal, and then thousands, tens of thousands even, of minor side quests, and they all vary in length and variety. I do love that they don't just stick with fetch quest on the side quest. You know, go gather 1,000 ore and then come back to me. There is a little bit of that, but they actually have a great amount of interesting, fun things you can do too for side quests. Studio game direction. This just means that Larian Studios had a clear vision of what they wanted, and that comes through. That comes through in a lot of ways. Okay. Here, I'll play another song from here. You can see beautiful, a great range of characters. That's another thing I'll get into since we got a little time here, folks. This game has awesome AI. The artificial intelligence is pretty smart. Now, you can make it incredibly easy to play, where even on incredibly easy, you still gotta try a bit. You can't just go in and bash your way through. There are certain fights where it's like, this is designed to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible on harder difficulties. So even on easy mode, you can still make it challenging if you're really more into the story. But if you go to tactician mode, you're in for your money. Let me tell you, friend, you better know your D&D mechanics because it goes in depth and it makes a difference in the harder modes. You need to know about poison resistance. You need to know what grease does as more than just a flammable liquid. You need to know what different enemy types are weak to what different types of damage. Piercing, bludgeoning, slashing, yada yada. Now, here's the benefit to that. I did not know a lot of those things going into this. I'm not a D&D major nerd turbo aficionado, but it was easy to learn. It gives you a description of every enemy that you're fighting, and because it's turn-based, you can look through it, take your time. You're not in a rush, so that's one pro to it. I mean, look at this. It's just incredible, some of the things you can see here. Now, I'll tell you this about Baldur's Gate 3. Before we wrap things up, because I know this is a pretty quick podcast. It is a 10 out of 10 game. Amazing. If you're into RPGs, if you like Skyrim, if you like XCOM, if you like Civ 6, if you like Final Fantasy, you'll probably love this game. However, do I recommend it to everyone? Actually, no, I don't. No. I mean, it's difficult to find a game that you would recommend for everyone, but here's who might not enjoy this game. If you like faster-paced gameplay, like Call of Duty, or perhaps Battlefield, roguelike games even, maybe Hades or Cult of the Lamb, if you're into those sorts of things, number one, go check out my channel because I just beat Cult of the Lamb. But number two, you might not like Baldur's Gate 3. There's a lot of planning and thinking and strategizing that go into it. You got to plan it out a bit. And you can easily mess yourself up where you've just wasted an hour, 2 hours of gameplay if you don't think it through. And oftentimes I did have to reload things my first playthrough to make sure I got the way that I wanted the story to go. I was a little bit of a save scummer, and you probably will be too if you play this. Also, probably would not recommend it for younger kids unless they're just really into like logic puzzle kind of stuff. Number one, the content's not appropriate for families. For kids, of course, it's for adults. But more so, it's got a lot of complicated systems in it, and it would be tough for a younger gamer to grasp all that and perhaps really enjoy it. Okay, so overall, 10 out of 10 game. Recommend it for anyone who's a good gamer and just for checking out in general. Now, the price point, it's $70, guys. That's a lot of money this day and age. That's not cheap, even for Christmas. So I'll say it's worth the $70 in terms of number of hours you get out of it. And if you're into D&D, go on, fork up the $70. It's worth it for you, okay? But if you're a little hesitant, don't sweat it. There's plenty of games that are half this price that still do a fantastic job at capturing the essence of role-playing games. You can always wait till it goes on sale, too. This is one of those games that probably will have a bunch of sales coming in sometime late next year, if you can wait a year on it. Alright, guys. I'm Taps, and this has been Baldur's Gate 3. As always, thanks for tuning in. Stay hydrated.